Back to the CHGO Sky Show, the CHGO Sky Podcast, part of CHGO Sports and the All-City Sports Network. I am Chris Pennant, here with the best X's and O's, man, this side of the Mississippi, Missouri, and Walla Rivers, my bad. That's Stephen Pridgeon Garner in the chair with me, and we got Super Sarah Fichter on the wheels of steel today.
Hello.
Sarah, what's going on? 1 for 2 in last night's softball game, Sarah.
I tried to pull a bias too, and I was trying to avoid getting tagged when I was running the third, and I couldn't get there.
We don't have to talk about the rest of the game, but I will say that I was playing first base for my team, and Sarah was catching, and with 16-inch, catchers usually like stand back there, throw the ball back, and I'm like, Sarah gets no hits tonight, and on the next pitch she gets a hit.
That's how it goes.
Hey, that's how we do it.
That's what's called karma in the Eastern religion.
Yeah, shout out Charlie the Bacon Man.
Shout out Charlie the Bacon Man. I got to get some of that bacon myself. Well, not a lot. I need to lose some weight. Anyway, this is the CHGO Sky Show. As you can tell, we're back in studio. Thank you everybody for joining in and tuning in with us. Click that link to subscribe and become a Chicago diehard. We got a lot of things going on, not just for us this summer, but every time at allchgo.com you can read this man's writings for no charge. You get that free you get the discount on the Chicago CHGO Sky merch and all of our sports here at CHGO Sports. So there's no real opposition to doing it. It's 10 games into the season, 40-game season. That means we're 25% of the way down. The Sky are 4-6 after taking a loss to the Atlanta Dream the other night by 9. But like almost every game this season, they had a comeback in them and made it close, Steven. And that's been a hallmark of this team. They're never out of it.
Yeah, that's something that was going to, regardless of issues or production on either side of the ball, the competitive level that the team was going to have, matching the energy of the coach, but also each individual player, just kind of like a puzzle piece coming together as a whole. That's one thing that was never going to be an issue, regardless of, like I said, who might be in or out of lineups, all of that stuff. They were going to compete, and that naturally is going to be something that allows them opportunity in the end of games, whether they have a lead or whether they're trying to work from behind to come back at the end of a game. They're always going to have that, and I feel like if that's part of your foundation with what you're building with a bunch of newness, that's gonna be something that you can certainly repeat on consistency and sustain as part of your identity.
Yeah, there's no other way to put it, man. I was checking back on our bookmark tweets for the Twitter account, and I saw Tom Waddle off the Waddle and Sylvie show on draft night. He said this was the equivalent of the Pippen Grant draft for the Bulls. And if we think back on that, and I say that for myself, actually, I actually say that for none of us because none of us were around for that draft, to be fair. But that team took a lot of time to develop. Scottie Pippen was a young, rail-thin kid from Central Arkansas. Horace Grant had designs on going to the Marines before he got big at Clemson. And nobody really knew that other than Jerry Krause and the most hardcore of Bulls fans. And that team took time to develop from 87 to 91 when they eventually won the team's first championship. And I think, like you said, we're seeing the seeds of that being sown with this team. And that's what we talk about when we're talking about, like, the forecast, the 30-game forecast, like what's next for the team. You're going over, like, the outlook, what's been good so far. We know Angel Reese, her rebounding prowess, her ability to draw fouls, which is something that the team has lacked for years now. And just her, I think, outside of that, her cachet with the fans, with the city at large, with such a wide swath of the population. The game in D.C., she had so many people come down from Baltimore, but also people who came into town from other places who are Angel Reese fans. That's been huge for the team.
It has been, and I think that's something that past anything on the court, you want to have draw attention to yourself from the local fans, from the national media outlets, and everywhere in between. And I feel like with not just Angel but also Camila, and their collegiate ties and all of the attention that they earned and garnered while they were at their respective colleges, winning national championships, each of them the past 2 years. That's the type of draw that you want to have in addition to everything else. Like, there's the on-court stuff, there's the business stuff, and then there's the marketing. Naturally, with those two players being your prize coveted first-round picks from this highly anticipated 2024 draft, you get those two, the marketing side is going to take care of itself in abundance. And that's just like that's really what you want. They knocked that out the park pretty much as any other team in the W. You can make an argument for the Los Angeles Sparks with Rakia and Cameron, but neither one of those two have the same type of grasp and effect and gravity that those two and Camila and Angel have. So in that sense, the Sky knocked it out the park, and we saw that on the very first game and opener, or for the home opener rather, against the Connecticut Sun. I had the opportunity to talk to Coach Sidney prior to the game in Indiana, and he was mentioning that he hadn't seen a game from the women's side of things like the one that he saw on opening night. And I was telling him that it hadn't been like that in Wintrust since the 2021 championship, quite honestly. And we just kind of had some conversations back and forth about that, talking about the players that were on the teams in between the 2021 championship and prior to this season. And you would think that, especially with all of those teams ending their seasons in the playoffs at different respective times, that type of atmosphere would have been replicated. It just wasn't.
Right. Yeah, the momentum didn't really carry over, and that was, it was surprising to me, but the eyes have been in college for so long, and this is going back to, I think, really Brittany Griner's time in school, and even further back, Sue, Diana,
Candace
at Tennessee, and then even like the Meeks at Tennessee, Shamik Holdsclaw, and Pat Summitt really getting things started back in the 80s, 90s. So that's really just reaching the league now. Sarah, I know we got that. Can we bring up that 30-game forecast graphic? Because this is, I think, what we have to look forward to. And thanks to Justin Johnson, first time, hopefully long time, tuning into the show. The good so far that we've had this season that our friend of the show, Connor Moore, has so well picked up on is that Barbie and Ken dynamic. And that's what's been really the driving force for the team. And as we'll get into in a little bit, it's going to be the main driving force now with the Elizabeth Williams injury. That's part of the bad. But Angel Reese has been rebounding the ball. She's had a double-double, three times this season, I think. Mm-hmm. Had 13, and 5 steals against Atlanta, which, she's going up against the front court of Tina Charles and Cheyenne Parker-Tyus. Not an easy task. And she's really cemented herself as one of the marquee players. In the last ESPN ranking, she was, I think, listed as the second best rookie, according to advanced metrics, behind Cameron Brink. And then also the stocks, the steals and the blocks that the Sky have been able to accumulate. They average 13.6 a game, which is third in the league behind Minnesota and Las Vegas. And they're the only team that's averaging double-digit steals per game after 10 games.
Yeah, and Angel naturally is spearheading a whole lot of that. And I had an opportunity to speak with her post-game following the loss to Atlanta, and she gave pretty much a hat tip to Elizabeth Williams, just talking about the conversations they've had and the conversations they were actively having during that game, in which she was able to tie her career high in steals with 5. And she mentioned that Elizabeth had a lot to do with that, just kind of giving her pointers on the fly with how to guard Tina Charles. And the first of which being that you can't consistently guard Tina Charles because she's just that great on offense. So accepting that is the very first thing. Once you get past that part of your pride and then you're able to kind of focus on the things that you can take away, just looking at Angel being able to contest the catch points for Tina. So you have to catch the ball to get the ball in the post. So if you can push that catch point up the floor as high as you possibly can, in addition to contesting the catch with your offhand, that's something that Angel has shown to have an ability to do, and it's something that Elizabeth Williams was imploring for her to just stagnate some of the rhythm and some of the touches that Tina likes to get into with the Atlanta Dream. And that's something that Elizabeth has perfected for OG Chicago Sky fans. The catch contest part is something that Candace Parker as well as Emma Mieseman were exceptional at. To be able to do that on consistency in the post without picking up fouls is important. Angel has shown it in multiple stretches this season so far that she's able to defend effectively in the post, potentially deny the post, and if not deny it, be able to contest the catch to where it's breaking the rhythm and it's allowing her to really take away the leverage that a post player might be trying to gain on her. And then chaos induces from there because she's able to slide her feet. You can't get past her laterally more often than not, and it's almost impossible to go through her chest. So those little things like that in terms of Elizabeth Williams' leadership, but also Angel's receptiveness to critiquings and teachings really speaks to her greatness. She's already great in her role as it is, and that just really speaks to how much more she's going to grow as the season goes on. Like you said, we're only a quarter of a way through.
That's the amazing thing, right? We're 10 games in. The last show that we had, I was talking about at this stage of Angel's career, right? And it was, 6 games into the season? Mm-hmm. But you can see how much she brings to the team and how much she's improving on a game-by-game basis. I was watching back the New York, both of the games that they've had against the Liberty, and I think that there's still some holes in Angel's game, both on offense. Obviously, we know that we would like her to get her shot profile up higher, just be able to go up higher on those putbacks, on those post plays that she has. And to her credit, I think she's been able to do that or started to do that on a lot of the time she gets catches on the interior. But also transition defense. There were a couple times where she had some mix-ups going back down the floor against New York when they had that game where they were just raining threes. And I saw there was one play that the Liberty got a free shot from the corner, and Angel was late getting back, which allowed Breanna Stewart to get a touch. And so those are things that you would expect, especially in a Teresa Weatherspoon-led team, that she's going to figure out as time goes on. But I think some of it is just the tunnel vision a young person can get when they're looking for those offensive boards, trying for those offensive boards, and there's a moment where you're just like, turn around, run back up the floor. But against teams like New York that like to run, against teams like Las Vegas that like to get up out on the floor, you can't let those lapses go. You have to just keep at it. Yeah.
And I think if we're highlighting other positives that stood out this season, I think the play of Marina Mabry has to be highlighted. It's not getting enough attention. I actually wrote about her last week as my end of the week piece, just kind of highlighting why this season is so unique for her and also so important for her. The way she's being featured, the reliance on her consistency on offense, the leadership demand that's being placed upon her from herself, but also from her coach and her teammates. And for her to be able to check off all of those boxes so consistently really speaks to the space that she's operating in as an athlete in terms of maturity and composure and control of one's game, to also allow for that control of one's game to have impact in a positive way for the other 4 players that are on the court with you in the same jersey. She's having a great season so far. I know the last couple of games haven't necessarily been up to the bar that she has set for herself. But again, when you apply the context and you look at the attention that she's garnering and the respective pieces around her and seeing how she's controlling the game and how she's coming up with timely moments and how she's even more than the offensive side bought into everything that she's being asked to do defensively, that really just speaks to the coaching ability of Teresa Weatherspoon to have this kind of draw for an all-star caliber player through just 10 games in the regular season and having only spent about 7 weeks together now at this point. But also just speaks to, like I mentioned in the opening, Marina just being in a certain space as a woman and also as a basketball player, to where all of these things are just kind of connected and she has a certain gravity to her. When she scores now, it's not just for herself. Her scoring has an impact that reverbs around the team as a whole. She knocks down the 3 and she's throwing up the 3 like this, like Kalia Copper used to do and continues to do in Phoenix. That has a type of energy that it grabs out of everybody else on the floor. Now they go to the defensive side of the ball and everybody's on time with their rotations. They mess around and get a stop, and now they're playing this transition and playing the style of basketball that they need to be consistently successful with this current roster context. So I want to definitely make sure we give some attention to Marina. Her numbers, like I said, have gone down just a little bit over the last handful of games, but she's still near a career high in scoring at 15.6. She's grabbing 6 rebounds a game still, which is certainly a career high.
That's incredible.
And she's actually, the scoring is a career high for her. She's also at 4.2 assists. So she's getting the job done, and she's doing all of that while taking almost 7 3-point attempts a game, shooting almost 39%. So those little things just really add up for her.
For sure, and we're going to get into more of that too. Like we mentioned Kennedy Carter, it almost goes without saying what she's been able to do, leading the league in bench scoring at 12.2 points per game. She, for the first time this season, was held to single-digit scoring against Atlanta, but before that she put up 25 in D.C. against the Mystics and led that second half comeback for the Sky to get a much-needed win. Not just because they were in need of it, but because nobody wants to lose to a winless team. You know that from personal experience.
Yeah.
You're playing those. I don't know who the team that was down was out in the what was the conference you were playing in high school?
West Suburban Gold.
So who was the team that you just like did not want to lose to back then?
I would probably say Addison Trail.
Oh yeah, so okay, I even knew that. It took me a second, but I was like, no, I don't know if I've heard that name in a while. So yeah, and shout out to Yale Shua. We're going to bring them up a little later. My Kennedy Carter jersey came in today. Hey, shout out to you, man. That number 7 is a good number to have. Always a lucky number. This is the CHGO Sky Show. We're going to take a quick break to talk to you about the refreshing flavor of Coors Light. Now, as you know, we're getting into the heat of the summer, Stephen, like I've been saying for weeks. It's been here since about, it seems like April, maybe the latter stages of March. It's been 80 degrees at one time or another. And in those cases, you always just want to chill out, relax with an ice cold Coors Light. You know it is cold when the mountains are blue. LL Cool J's popping out of your refrigerator saying, I need a girl, I need love. And he just hands you that Coors Light and you feel that too. And honestly, the discourse being the way it is right now, sometimes you just need to lay back and let the Johnny-come-latelys have their say. And in the meantime, pop open the top on that Coors Light. You see it right here in the bucket in front of us. It's always cold filtered, always fresh, never frozen. And so you know, all summer long, whether you're at home, whether you're at Wintrust, whether you're on the road like Steven has been, like he's going to be in Phoenix, like I was in Washington, you can always reach for an ice-cold Coors Light. And always, if you check out instacart.com/CHGO you can get a free offer from CHGO to get Coors Light delivered, especially straight to your home. Coors Light Brewing Company, Golden, Colorado. Always drink responsibly. Whew, that was an adventure. I promise you I did not have a Coors Light before I did that read. The other thing that we got going this summer, now that the sun is out and up all the time, is Shady Rays, man. I love talking about Shady Rays. Get ready for the season ahead with quality shades built to last, and our friends at Shady Rays have you covered with premium polarized shades that won't break the bank. They're an independent company offering world-class product rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people. And even though you don't see them on my face right now, they've got prescription options available. So I love to wear Shady Rays when I'm at the park, if I'm hooping, if I'm biking, if I'm playing softball. Anytime I'm outside in the Chicago summertime, Shady Rays is absolutely my go-to. And exclusively for our listeners, if you're watching the CHGO Sky Show right now, Shady Rays is giving out their best deal of the season. So head to ShadyRays.com and use that code CHGO for 35% off. 35% off all polarized sunglasses. Try for yourself. The shades rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people. Shady Rays, proud sponsor of the CHGO Sky Show and CHGO Sports. We got our guest coming in a minute, but I do want to go to back to Marina Mabry because there was something very important that we both had keyed in on and have keyed in on over the last few weeks, and that's the three-point shooting. Now, when Teresa Weatherspoon came in, we knew that not only was she going to be defensive-minded, she was going to be an old-school type coach. And I think the thing about old-school type coaches, especially ones that have played in the 90s or in the 80s, is that they like to work from the inside out. They like to go for the high-percentage shot in the paint, and they're very much more oriented towards the paint and the restricted area. So what you've seen from this guy is a lot of transition defense working for fast break opportunities. And on the other side, the three-point shooting has kind of gone down. And if you can bring that first graphic up, Sarah, for the lacking for threes. And Steven, I know you went into even more detail with this on another graphic you asked for. But in their first 5 games, the Sky averaged about just under a quarter of their entire field goal attempts were threes. Not too bad, not great, still below league average. But the last 5 games, including against Atlanta, that has dropped to 17.6%. And the problem is, you see Dana Evans, the majority of those shots are being taken by Dana Evans and Marina, which means that offenses can key on them and not allow them good looks at three and sag into the paint off just about anybody else who's on the floor.
Yep, and that is one of the natural kind of flaws of the roster. If you just look from top to bottom on the roster, it's definitely a front court heavy team in terms of where a majority of the talent that they'll be able to dictate with is going to come from. And that's not an issue, but the issue in process kind of comes with, okay, so if we're playing inside out, naturally teams are going to look to swarm and pack the paint and kind of shrink the floor on either the post defender or either whoever it is that's grabbing the ball in the post, whether that be Camila, whether that be Angel. Also Marina Mabry, who's been featured with her post touches, which I've talked about plenty this season. At some point, they're going to start to concede attention away from someone who's spaced around that action and onto the person with the ball, to either force them to give it up, to shrink the floor and limit their options in decision-making, or to just generally speed them up and break the rhythm.
Yep.
And those things are happening with consistency, but it's not only happening in the post. It's also happening when Marina has the ball pretty much anywhere on the floor. They're looking to, like I said, shrink the floor, speed up her process, and then generally get the ball out of her hands. That's something that they have to be able to take advantage of. When you have the ability to get multiple defenders committed to one particular person with the ball, that lends itself to having an advantage, meaning there's more offensive players around the court outside of the primary ball handler than there are defenders to defend those players. So with their spacing, when they nail their spacing and they have people occupying specific pockets of the floor to take advantage of the space, make the defenders have to cover more real estate, that's where opportunities to hit three-pointers is going to come from for them. And that's something that they have to be able to get those shots up with more consistency. I don't think that in their process they can't generate three-point shots. I just don't necessarily feel like they're going about doing so in the way that's most sustainable and most repeatable. I mentioned in the article that a few of the biggest ways that they can do so, the first of which being with Marina Mabry touching the ball anywhere on the floor. Mm-hmm. She's the best offensive player. She garners the most attention. So naturally, you get the ball in her hands. She's grown as a playmaker, which I've highlighted in growth since last season. That presents you an opportunity to offer her passes, be able to either get a direct shot from the person that catches the ball or make an extra quick decision pass to someone else who's then able to shoot those threes. If not in that context or anytime when Marina has the ball, Camila Cardoso is another player that's always going to garner extra attention whenever she touches the ball below the free throw line. Somebody's going to commit help, and it's probably going to be more than just two players doing so. And in those scenarios, she has the opportunity to display and highlight her playmaking ability, which is underrated. She can make passes. She sees the floor well. And she's shown it at South Carolina in multiple stretches, most recently in the championship game. And, those type of things and those type of opportunities are advantage creation. Those are the shots you want to be able to take three-pointers off of from those contexts of play. They're not doing it consistently enough. I think it's somewhere that they can get to, but they just have to be a little bit more intentional about it. And I think some of the losses we've seen have come just because of a discrepancy in math. They might not take as many threes, or they might make more threes but take a whole lot less attempts than another team, and that volume and the math just kind of doesn't play in their favor to the extent that when they dominate the boards like they have in a handful of games, or when they dominate in trips to the free throw line like they have in other games. Because of those only coming with 1 or 2 point advantages and other teams are knocking down more threes, again, the math just finds a way to work against you at some point. So I'm not even talking about efficiency on the conversion of those attempts. You just have to consistently create those opportunities. They can do a better job with that.
Yeah, and that three-point generation graphic that you asked for, they're last in makes and attempts and percentage of points from the three-point arc, which you would expect. And even in their shooting the problem is they're not getting up enough threes, and they're not hitting enough threes. And you saw in that preceding graphic, the shot selection for Dana and Marina was below, I think, their averages. Maybe Marina's was a touch up over the first 5 games. And those last 5 games, you see Dana Evans just really shrinking away from the three-point line. And Marina, that 6.0 is actually kind of skewed because she took 11 threes in one game against the Sparks. So when you have, like we see, these two players taking the amount of threes, and I do want to bring in our guest in here in a minute, they have options available. Michaela's actually shooting the 3rd most threes as part of her entire amount of field goal attempts this year, Michaela Onyenwere. And we saw her start, and she was probably that third option in terms of perimeter shooting, and definitely from shooting from the corner. There was a clip that you keyed in on where there was a cross screen, and Angel got the ball on a touchdown low, and in particular, Marina and Izzy flowed down to the baseline so that Angel could basically clear space out there. Mm-hmm. And I'm wondering, and I want to get your opinion on this before you bring in Maria Hadden, if right now the coaching staff's primary directive is get our bigs a chance to refine their shots down low, and then we can work on being able to move the ball so when they do get doubled, you kick back out to the perimeter and then swing one over for a pass.
I think that's something that they've had conversations about. And that in particular, what you're speaking to is re-spacing. So you have your initial spacing, and then once you get to whatever your primary action is, you re-space around that to give that person breathing room. I do think that's something that they can be better with. I've heard from multiple players over the course of this first quarter of the season that they can be better with it. But, yes, I do think in process that's something that they're looking to be better with. But, again, it's going to be those players that are getting the ball in the post also understanding how to not just, catch and go to the basket, but be able to manipulate the defense to where now that person that's one pass away, the defender is committing fully to you. And once they commit fully to you, now that person that naturally they're guarding is going to be open. And you can kick it to them, and they either take a direct shot or they can pass it to the next player. The defensive dominoes are falling in advantage, and now you can play off of that. I think that's just the context of offense in terms of read and react that they're still working through their process with in terms of where Teaspoon likes for them to be and the rhythm and cadence at which they want to play in read and react from that advantage that's created. Something they're working on, they'll get there, but again, it's just something that's going to consistently be in their way until they kind of iron out the kinks with it. And naturally, you're not going to get there until you have your best players on the floor. So Camila being back for multiple games now, you're starting to see the process get ready to develop. And we might be having a different conversation once we enter the halfway point of the regular season, going into All-Star break and everything after that.
Next 10 games is going to be interesting to watch. Let's bring in our guest now. She is a current 49th Ward Alderwoman of the Chicago City Council, born and raised in Columbus, Ohio, which means that she went to a state university in Ohio, I believe. I'm not sure exactly which one. Came to Waukegan in 2003, moved to the city officially in 2004. Former member of the Participatory Budgeting Project, Black Youth Project 100, My Block, My Hood, My City, I believe, as well. No, not that one. Sorry, I got one wrong. I apologize. My notes were not the greatest.
And I graduated from the Ohio State University.
See, that's why I didn't say it, because
the Ohio State University.
All y'all Buckeye grads are the same. I swear, there is no definite article on that university's title.
There is.
I know they copyrighted it. I know. Please welcome Maria Hadden to the show, proud Rogers Park resident. And the first thing that I want to ask is, how did you get caught up in this whole milieu of ours? When was your first time being a Chicago Sky fan?
Definitely became a fan during that 2021 season. So a few things about me, even being from Ohio and from Ohio State, like playing sports, never a big fan in watching sports, right? Never a big spectator. If you grow up in, you grow up in a Big Ten city, it's obligatory, right? So I know sports, every family gathering included sports, but I'd prefer to play than to watch most times. And so coming to Chicago and such a sports city, it's almost overwhelming, the options we have. But I'll say, especially kind of through those early years of the pandemic and having a little bit more, let's say, downtime in some ways, it was an exciting season to really start watching and be aware of. And immediately my wife and I did partial season tickets. So that 2021 season was a lot of fun to really get to know that team. And though the team has changed a lot in the kind of following years, we're hooked.
And I know I saw that you had a photo up that you posted on Twitter of you and Natalia at the game. Was that the preseason game for season ticket holders? Yeah,
that's probably the one that you saw. And then we've been back since we caught the Sparks game. So next game, I think that we've got in our deal will be the Fever game.
Oh, so the one that everybody's gonna be at.
Yeah, which you choose your games like well in advance. So you'll appreciate this. I've got my sister, brother-in-law, and 2 nieces come into town the weekend of Juneteenth. And so when I picked these games, that Fever Sky game's the 23rd. And so when I was kind of solidifying dates with them, this is like pre-NCAA playoffs, right? I'm like, this is great. It's pretty easy for me to be able to get a few extra tickets, right? A couple days before the game, we'll plan to take the girls to a Sky game. They're going to love it. My nieces are 11 and 13. I'm like, this is going to be great. You'll have a great time. And then we had the spring that we had and are where we are. And needless to say, my family is not joining me at that Sky game. It was like, hey, sorry, guys. I know I told you I could get you tickets, but everything has changed now.
You mean they're not trying to shell out the $225 for 200 level tickets?
When I finally got around to checking, I think they were only selling 5-game packages. If you wanted tickets to that game, you had to buy a 5-game package.
Wow.
But that was a month or so ago. So yeah, before the season started.
Okay. I'm curious, just in kind of your viewing of the team, especially this season, and looking at the polarizing figures that Angel Reese and Camila Cardoso are coming from college. As a black woman, I'm just curious, what's been your assessment of how they've handled the attention they've garnered, how they've handled the positive and negative side of those things, and just generally their presence in this climate of the United States that we're living in right now?
Yeah, there's certainly really exciting additions to the team in that kind of very high-profile freshman space. I'm excited about the team. So one, I'm glad we have them. I think they're a good fit on our team. Also, really excited with Kennedy Carter's an amazing player, right? Excited we've got her. I think Elizabeth Williams is another one of my favorites. But it's been very interesting to watch all of the kind of energy generated around this last NCAA season, around these top draft picks, around all these new players. I think long term, it's going to be positive for the WNBA. I think in the short term, as anything that comes with a lot of attention, I think there are a lot of unintended consequences. So I hate to see so much of the negative pressure on these players. They're adults, they're still young women, right? It's very high profile. That is a lot of mental, right, and emotional strain and stress to be put on folks. I feel in what I've seen from, our team, that the coaching staff, the team overall seem to really be providing a great safe space and safe environment to make sure that, the ones getting a lot of attention here in Chicago are also getting the support that they need and the guidance.
That's interesting because I know, Stephen, we've seen so much this season. Teresa Weatherspoon talk about these players in post-game press and pre-game like they're kind of a family. Like she's really watching over them. And I was wondering about that myself in D.C., and I hadn't really talked to you about it outside of or inside of the discussions we've had, because I think with the media, even the ones that have been covering the W for a while, and certainly for the ones just coming in, that might be different than what they're used to in terms of seeing from a coach. And so with this unprecedented level of attention for those players, and with this being a majority black woman space, I was wondering how that, I wanted to ask her where that came from.
I think a lot of it just stems from to coach the way that she does, you have to generate a level of buy-in. And to generate buy-in, you have to buy into the person that these individual players are. I think a lot of times, naturally, viewers of the game forget that these players are actual human beings. And to have a coach that can reach the personable side of things to the extent that Teresa can, and then even past that to appreciate each one of these women for who they are, and to be able to resonate with them. I think Kennedy talked about it with me on Media Day, that one of the biggest things in relatability between her and Teaspoon with the handful of players on the roster is that she can relate to how it feels to be counted out and to be betted against, and to be able to go against the grain to the extent that you see successes in a sustained manner, I think matters. You can't see that in all coaches because everybody hasn't been through the same types of adversities. Everybody hasn't grown up in the same type of neighborhoods, haven't had the same type of upbringings. But when you have a coach that can resonate with you to the extent that Teaspoon can, and she buys into, like I said, the individuals that these women are, now when she's asking you to go out and do something that might not necessarily be comfortable but might be needed from the team, from you, you're going to be able to do that, and you're going to want to run through the wall for your coach and for the team, just because of all of that stemming from the leadership part.
Yeah, I was gonna say, and that's the leadership, I think, is the key piece, right? Like what that leadership is like. I also really appreciate, I feel like there's team culture that's there with some of our more experienced players, right? That is still part of that culture that they built, right, for that championship team. So like looking at, Mabry, Evans, right, Williams, some of our folks that have been there. One of the things that I really appreciate about this team that's very evident is that kind of culture of care, and that team spirit. Like, right, even in prior seasons, I feel like it never feels like a one player show. And so like whether it's that sense of family, right, that you're talking about, but that team culture is something I really appreciate. I think it brings a lot of positivity to the space. And it's one of the things I appreciate most about actually going to the in-person games.
I like that. I was going to ask, like what your favorite part was about going to games, but there's what's that dichotomy that you see if you compare the teams from the championship era, that like year preceding, the year of, the year after, to this team? Like if there's a main difference outside of that care that you talked about, do you see anything else that separates those two teams?
Obviously like each year, and I think this is like something, again, being not so much of a veteran WNBA fan, but from the years that I have been, with such a small league, which I'm glad it's growing, every year it's a new team for almost every franchise, right? Like even with some of your veteran players, every year it's a new league, it's a new team. There's so much talent there. So I've appreciated seeing kind of different players and how their roles have shifted, right, from kind of 2021 to now. But those differences, like there's still that through line of, I feel like the Chicago Sky team and like their team culture, that very team centered, working well together, good communication on the floor for the most part, is still something that stands out to me. Certainly, I've appreciated seeing the fan base grow. Being a part of that growing fan base, really getting to see that, grow year over year, in the time that I've been going to games, and they certainly deserve it. So I'm excited to see, them get the support that they, have earned. And, they're only going to do more to keep earning the love of Chicagoans and fans around the region.
We got Alderwoman Maria Hadden on the show of the 49th Ward. This is the CHGO Sky Show. I want to take a quick break here to talk to you about some of the goings-on we have this summer with CHGO, like the inaugural Cookout Classic Golf Tournament at St. Andrews Golf and Country Club out in Lakewood, presented by Miller Lite Shady Rays and Circus Spurts, Illinois. 18 holes with a card. You can sign up as an individual, a twosome, or a foursome, and you get a token for a complimentary Miller Lite. There's whole contests, giveaways, and prizes for holes, winning teams, and for last place. So if you're, and once every year golfer like me, then you still get a chance to get prizes. And there's lunch and a ceremony after the rounds, a cash bar for alcoholic beverages, but one complimentary spiked Arnold Palmer per person. Individual hole and tournament sponsorships are still available. Contact Spencer Smith at CHGO for more info. That's Spencer at allcitynetwork.com. And we also want you to get over to allchgo.com to learn about our free Cubs Fridays if you want to. The 120 Club is always Cub Sox takeovers, which there will be more of this season. And again, the golf tournament, which Steven will be at, letting y'all know how it is. He knows that I'm pointing to him because he did not have plans to be at that golf
news
tournament.
to me.
Yeah, man. You're already in two sports. You hoop, you play flag football. You got to keep branching out.
It's only 24 hours in a day.
Maria, do you ever hit the links?
No, it's funny thing. My mom golfs, and my dad used to golf before they met. My dad stopped years and years and years ago, but my mom, she's 71, and she's in a women's golf league back in Columbus, Ohio. So she's a avid golfer, but neither of them have ever taken the time to teach me. So I'm going home 4th of July weekend, and I told her she's got to at least take me to like Top Golf or something.
No, for real. They got to, yeah. My mom did not golf, but she bought a set of golf clubs. I think she worked at UPS, and I think there was an outing where she's like, I'm going to buy these just in case. But she knew that I liked it. I was 9 when Tiger Woods won the Masters. And so that was like the catalyst, like, so she was like, I will take you out here. And pretty much like everything else, it's like, I will get you there. I'm going to read my book. But here's a place for you to learn.
No, I stick to basketball. We started doing community softball games. Nice. So you can come up here and play a 16-inch softball game with us if you'd like. Yeah.
Sarah can say, I need to practice.
Well, I was going to say, I don't know if you know, but we're going for a back-to-back championship this year with our 16-inch softball team. We're now 3-0 as of yesterday.
Uh-oh.
Congratulations.
Just saying.
All right, you can come and give us some tips.
I'm at the bottom of the batting rotation, so I'm trying to work my way up.
Sarah's being modest. She got a hit last night.
I'm doing what I can.
So I hadn't played until last summer, and I ended up being our pitcher.
Oh, see, that's for 16-inch softball. That is the marquee spot.
It's dangerous.
That too.
You got to have hands.
Too. Yeah.
I've been hit. Yeah.
Until you get to the point, you can't even see it on the camera, but I got that one softball pinky finger right here. I wish we had a camera zoom in, but it's at a 75-degree angle at the knuckle. Yeah. You're gonna have the little athletic tape around your knuckles at the end of the year, coming into city council, like, hey,
whatchamacallit. My other thing is boxing. So not competitively, but I take boxing classes, and I go back and forth between my wife and my coach on whether or when I will spar. So as we talk about going into city council with injuries, so stay tuned as that progresses.
I did see as I was doing research for our show, there was an article that came up that you had in school. I think you'd had experience with debates, and particularly with interpersonal communication, and you'd made the comment.
Yes.
Yeah. And you made the comment that it was like, oh, this was my learning experience for running for city council.
Absolutely. Use those mediation and conflict resolution skills every day in this job. Every day.
Sarah, I know we got that I put out that poll on Friday, that one tweet about what the Sky should focus on over the season. And we hadn't talked about this either. But I asked the fans that were on Twitter, and as always, follow at CHGO_Sky. What's the most important focal point for the team this season? And player development got the lion's share of the votes, but there was also votes for making the playoffs, improving team chemistry, and even a few down there for a good 2025 draft position. So I wonder, both of you, like Maria first and Steven, what out of those four is most important for you?
I'm actually going to go with the poll results here. And I think, the fans are right. Player development, we've got so much talent and experience. And I just see so much potential. So I think that player development, making sure we've got that well-rounded team and, kind of keep creeping up the ranks a little bit, right? And kind of our rankings this year, but taking care of those players, making sure we can stay injury-free and we're building their skills so that we're poised for whatever we want to do next season.
Yeah, I'm actually in agreement here. I would be going with the poll results too. Naturally, we talked about this a handful of times. The makeup of Teresa Witherspoon's career, as also Jeff Pagliocca, the general manager, both of those two have respective careers with a background in player development. And when you draft two players, the likes of Camila Cardoso and Angel Reese, you have two players that are ready for the W, but you still have skill refinement and integration into things on the W level that has to take place. The quicker those things take place, the quicker you can transcend from. I'm not gonna say a rebuild because Teresa didn't say it was a rebuild, and neither did Jeff.
True.
So I would say retool. You transition from this retooling phase to now we're starting to contend for playoffs with consistency, and all you can ask for is opportunity from there. And the pace at which everything else takes place is gonna lend itself to when you get to a contending realm. I think that's the appropriate lens to look at this team through. I think that naturally you have so many players that are not going to be with the roster next season because of contractual situations with the salary cap and everything. Your core pieces are, two of them are going to be the two players you drafted this season. And getting the absolute most out of them in their rookie campaigns while also allowing for them to build their own chemistry as a tandem in the front court, I think is important. And then everything else is going to come from there. I think naturally investing mostly into skill development and player development might net you an opportunity at making the playoffs this season, but you can't get those other things without addressing that firstly. So I think that's appropriate.
I think the odd thing is that there's so many different directions that the Sky can look at, like not just those poll results, but we were talking about possibly netting 3-point shooting in a trade, and the name that we had tossed out was that you had tossed out, I should say, was Elizabeth Williams. Mm-hmm. And now with her injury, not only is she not on that trading block anymore, but you have Camila Cardoso in the starting lineup earlier than I think anybody really envisioned. So you still could look for 3-point shooting as a way to bolster the offense and improve your playoff position. Right now the Sky are at 8, even though they're 2 games under 500. Plus, if you look at this upcoming draft, not only does it have Paige Beckers in it, Kiki Ariafen from Southern California, but Olivia Miles, who's not only a good outside shooter and a shooting guard, but also another Notre Dame product, of which the Sky seem to have kind of made a point of amassing on their roster this year. Georgia Amore is in that draft, somebody that the Sky were looking at, and AZ Fudd from UConn, who, like 2 of the 3 players I've mentioned, have gone through kind of tough injuries in their college career, but their talent can't be understated. Maria, I know, as a graduate of Ohio State, there's that college focus. And a shout out, honestly, Ohio State in the last few years has had such a good run in the tournament and in the Big Ten. But if you were looking for anything for this team in the draft, because of the way that the W is situated, even at number 5, they could get a quality player. Is there anybody or anything that you could think of like that would be on the top of your wish list for what we need next year? I hit you with a hard one. My bad.
You did. I was gonna say I don't know. I one of the things I like so much about the picks and the team we've got now is I actually feel like we're pretty well rounded. I feel like we've got a good bench on most of our skills. So it's hard to say what gaps I'd be looking for. I don't know. Maybe a better question as we get a little bit further through the season. For me,
I've seen a few just super early mocks, and the one that really stood out to me, which I saw in a couple of different iterations of it, was Olivia Miles being drafted by the Chicago Sky, which would be very, very intriguing and very interesting to have all that she does in abundance added to the foundation that Teresa Witherspoon is looking to establish, added to the individual identities that Camila and Angel have as the individual players, seeing all of those things kind of mesh together, in addition to Marina Mabry, who's under contract for next season, will be very interesting, to say the least.
No doubt, man. It's funny, like we talked about the eyes that are on the league now. These college drafts are just going to bring more of those eyes, as you know how I'm a grown. We know how rabid Notre Dame fans are in general. And I think having more of their women's basketball team in the league at this stage, this tipping point, is going to make them even more rabid for better and for worse. You know, they're going to, especially in Chicago, they're going to be talking your ear off about it all the time. One thing I wanted to ask, because I think that this is something you can provide insight on that our listeners might not be able to get. The Sky need a practice space, and they're trying to get one, you know, closer in, either in the city. And with your experience with the participatory budgeting project and the participatory budgeting committee, where that really has a close eye on those TIF funds and how to spend that public money, not necessarily from, you know, a city council standpoint, but what are the difficulties that you can see or have seen with the Sky being able to get that practice space, especially when you consider that the funding for Wintrust Arena itself was somewhat controversial in that respect?
It's this gets into like our broader conversation about the new Bears Stadium, about like sports facilities in general. I'd say I'm critical of kind of that current proposal on the table for the Bears Stadium, and one of my critiques is I'm not on the surface against using public funds for sports stadiums. I think we get into these spaces where like there's very few that aren't built using public funds. I think the conversation needs to be, and like the Sky do need a practice space here. We want them in the city. We want the Red Stars to play in the city, right? Right. So I think what conversation we should be having is we're a sports town, we're an entertainment city, right? Like, and we're going to be, so we do need like top-notch sports facilities. Why aren't we doing a needs assessment, right? That kind of shows that if we're going to be going to the state or going to the taxpayers in general and asking for funds so that we could really build the thing that we need that's not just geared towards one team. I think that's where my head is at. Some of the difficulties and the challenges come down to where the private funds are going to come from, right? So when we look at the public-private kind of investment model, you know, the Bears are ready to, you know, pony up some funds, but they're only focused on the Bears, right? But Chicago needs to be focused on what Chicago needs long-term and big picture. And it's more than just a stadium for the Bears. So I'm hopeful that in some of these conversations, and maybe the Bears proposal kicking the conversation off, that maybe we're able to dig down a little bit. You know, we've definitely had some conversations within City Hall. Certainly there are conversations at the state level to really look at what's the land we have available and what are our needs outside of the Chicago Bears to make sure that we're creating the spaces. Because like we're talking, right, like billions of dollars to create the kind of spaces that we need. They're always going to be controversial, so we need to get it right. And if we're going to go that direction, then we should be checking multiple boxes. So I think for multiple teams when it comes to keeping Chicago like this thriving, wonderful place that's going to recruit the talent that we need for our teams, but also support the fan base that we've got here and in the surrounding regions. So would love to see the Sky get practice facilities nearby. But that always takes time when we're talking about constructing from new. I'll say that I've thrown out there, we'll see how things turn out, that it would be amazing to have practice space at the Obama Presidential Center.
Okay.
I'm seeding this into the atmosphere. They're going to have, gymnasium facilities, basketball courts, all kinds of things. I don't know what all of that's going to look like, but if we're looking at a first step of trying to, at least get the Sky some practice facilities in the city, and looking at what existing facilities we have, and what might be new and coming online, that's definitely something that I've been throwing out there to see what the possibilities are.
So I like that, because then there's a possibility in the future at some point in time of Barry getting cooked by Kennedy Carter, which that was the first thing that popped in. Well, that and Arnie Duncan, like bodying up Camila Cardoso, because you know that's going to happen.
The possibilities are endless there. So
That's a possibility that I hadn't even considered, because we talked about just locations and kind of the team's changing demeanor on the whole subject, but Steven, like putting it at the Obama Center, where they're doing the construction's already been going crazy for the last year, I think, would put them both close to the arena and in a community that I think is already tapped in to the Sky in general.
Yeah, I think logistically it makes a lot of sense. I think literally, literally it makes a lot of sense. And I just think it just generally, geographically looking at the city, it just makes sense for it to be in that vicinity, that specific sector of the city, near Wintrust, not too far from downtown, not too far from the lake either. Like, just logistically, it just makes a lot of sense. I think that's something I'm going to cede with you. I'm 10 toes down about that. These women have earned it over the years. The ones that came before this current iteration of the team and the ones on the team now are doing the very same. It's been time. That the rent for that is past due a handful of seasons now.
Yeah, having them out in Deerfield is too far.
yeah, I would agree. I've got some friends who live out there, and they and that's their rec center, right? So they're like, it's so cool. You can see their lockers and everything. So it's also, when we think about, it's both too far, but it's also, they're the Obama Center wouldn't offer a full private space for them, but they're not currently in a private space, anyway. But it would at least accomplish some goals. So I think when we think about like near term solutions and then looking at some of those kind of midterm to longer term solutions, as we probably are eventually going to be talking about building some type of new sports facility, right, for the city of Chicago. But for the near term, I think that's the one space in my mind that I'm like, that could work possibly.
Yeah, and that's kind of the lens I'm looking at it through. Obviously, it's not the end all fix all type of thing where it's going to be something that they can proclaim is literally their own, but it's a step in the right direction. And I think, I mean, we've been having this conversation for how many years now? I think just to see something, decision, and logistically in place where you're starting to see at least steps being taken past just words and past just hearing about this wonderful blueprint and, visiting facilities, literally seeing them take one step closer to literally being in the city for one.
Yeah.
To then give yourself that extra time you need to nail the location and get the actual thing, the ball rolling there. I think will help with everything. It would give clarity to everybody that's desiring this for these women, and for these women to see it themselves, because they're tired of hearing, it's coming, it's on the way, it's in the works, it's complicated, all of this. They want to see results, just like everybody wants to see results from them. Nobody wants to hear about process their entire careers. They want to see results. So you flip the script, they want to see results with the things that are going to help for them to ultimately get to that contending realm that they desire to be at, that competitive disadvantage that they're at with other teams, almost half of the league now having their own facilities that they can truly call their own. So that's something that has to take place. I think everything that you just mentioned will certainly help take strides in the right direction, and I think it would kind of bring a common presence, in a sense, to everything that we're desiring to see for the team going forward.
Yeah, Maria, what was that like for you over the wintertime, just seeing those faces go? Because that was the refrain that we got. And from Courtney Williams and Alana Smith, who were such outstanding faces of the group last year that have carried us over from the championship era to now. How was that when you heard, like, these teams have such a setup that they've had for years, and knowing that the Sky have not reached that level yet?
It was hard, right? Like it was a hard as a fan, it's a hard thing to listen to kind of hear those reasons, but also you totally understand, right? Like you get it. It's like, oh, if I were in that position, right? And this is what I'm doing day in and day out, right? And thinking about my working conditions. And if I've got other options, I'm going to make choices, right? That are going to get me the better working conditions, because we know it's not all about pay. A lot of it is, right, about the working conditions. Like, what's the difficulty of you getting to where you need to be? What's the quality of facilities? Are you feeling supported? right? Do you feel supported by your city, supported by your franchise, like supported by your fan base? But it's sad to see some of those folks go. Still, you end up being, I was happy for them.
Most definitely. Alderwoman Hadden, I appreciate you coming on the show.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you guys for having me. And maybe next time I'll get to come and hang out with you in studio.
That would be great. Is there anything that you want to talk about that's going on in the mighty 49th Ward this summer?
Oh, so much. We've got Taste of Chicago in Rogers Park this Saturday. So I'd say, check out the city site. Taste of Chicago is going to be, they do it in the neighborhood. So we're going to have a great time this Saturday. It's Father's Day weekend. We have this annual Artist of the Wall Festival. So if you've ever spent any time up at Loyola Beach, we've got this fantastic, retaining wall that we do every year, community murals. So if you come out Saturday morning, you'll catch me and Natalia doing some mural painting. We paint every year. You'll catch me later at the Taste. We've got a Juneteenth celebration with a Just Harvest. So this is June is always the busy time. And this weekend, when a lot of these events coincide, is always when I've got to triplicate myself and be in multiple places at once. 49th Ward, Rogers Park, we always have lots of stuff to do. So come see us, check out our festivals. We've got a Chalk Festival in August. We've got a Taco Crawl. We've got the Glenwood Avenue Arts Fest. And then year round, we just have some of the best food in the city. So come check out our restaurants.
Okay, I can agree with that. I'm from South Shore, been in Hyde Park, so there's part of me that's I want to say, wait a second, but it's true. There's a lot of selection up north by Loyola, man.
Mm-hmm.
There is. No, you get a lot of, I tell people you can eat around the world, right? We've got our Nigerian food, our Senegalese, we've got our West Indian food, we've got our Cambodian food, we've got our Korean food, we've got Mexican food represented in many different regions of Mexico, right? So get your Oaxacan stuff, get your poblano food. We've got a Venezuelan papusa spot. We've got Peruvian. So you just come up here. You can get whatever you want.
Yeah, I just had pupusa after the Mystics game. I'm hooked. I'm hooked forever now. Thank you once again, Alderwoman Maria Hadden of the 49th Ward, Chicago Sky superfan. Hopefully you see her at many games this season, including that Fever game on June 25th. Once again, thank you for coming on, and we'll hopefully see you soon.
See you soon.
Steven, man, I know you got a lot to look forward to on allchgo.com. What you got coming out of the pipeline next?
Just kind of looking at trends that are starting to take place through the first quarter of the regular season. Kind of projecting forward, looking at obviously the Elizabeth Williams injury, Camila being in the starting lineup, and assessing what that looks like in contrast or in comparison to what it looked like with E. And just generally continuing to gauge the development of Camila as well as Angel, and looking at who is going to step up from the outside of those two in Marina realm to really kind of put a stranglehold on things in terms of saying that this is going to be my dynamic and role, and I'm going to consistently show up. Naturally, we've seen Kennedy be that for every game of the season outside of the most recent one against Atlanta, so you can chalk her into the top 4 there, and kind of figuring out who else is going to carve out a niche. Is it going to be Izzy, who's been seeing some of her best play in the Chicago Sky uniform the last couple of games? Is Dana going to have a resurgence? The two Jordan Brand respective representatives on the team, I'm just it's gonna be curious to kind of see what comes of that. Also with Diamond coming back from injury, seeing how she continues to progress coming back from injury, and just seeing what her impact on things is gonna be. She's had a very good season defensively. I'm just curious to see what all is gonna sustain on the offensive side with that.
Check out CHGO.com for Stephen Pridgeon Garner's next articles coming out, and always check us out on CHGO_Sky, and that's CHGO_Sports. This is the CHGO Sky Show, part of the All-City Sports Network. I'm Chris. He's Steven. That's Sarah. Until next time, be good, do great things, and keep your head above the clouds.
We all silly like the mayor.